So, hey everybody, welcome to this month's Cosmic Conversation. Happy to have you all here. So, for this month, we are featuring guest speaker Rutuparna Das, an astrophysicist and science communicator, who recently launched a new NASA's Universe of Learning project called the Diaries of the Cosmos. So, this is an audio series showcasing stories of scientists and discovery. So we're going to hear about the project and how it aims to showcase stories and voices of scientists from a variety of backgrounds, particularly women and underrepresented minorities. And this is in an effort to encourage a diverse group of learners to see themselves reflected in the world of science. So I'll hand it off to Rutu to do a very brief introduction into the project, and then we can get into the fun part, the conversation. So Rutu, over to you.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for the intro, Jesse. Hi, I'm Rutu. So yeah, I'm an astrophysicist and science communicator at the Center for Astrophysics in Cambridge. And I'll just start sharing my screen. This might take a moment because for some reason PowerPoint has decided now is the time to act up. So give me just a second.
And you should have full permissions. Let me know if you don't.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, no, it's on my end with PowerPoint. It's not. Okay, I think I got that going. All right. That's why I hadn't actually turned my video on. I was trying to figure that out in the background, but let's see. Share screen. And okay, so hopefully you are all seeing. Oh,
Yep.
and I made the mistake. I should have shared screen with audio, so I'm gonna do that again. Sorry. I have not needed to share a screen with audio in a while, so I forgot that part. Share screen. Okay. All right. So now you should be seeing my presentation, something that says Diaries of the Cosmos.
Yep, we see it.
Okay, awesome. So what we've got here is a project that showcases different parts of the scientific story. We want to showcase the people behind astronomical discovery, and we want to showcase the processes. And I'll go more into what I mean by all of this in a bit. So I guess you're all familiar with NASA's Universe of Learning. So this is one of the general slides I have at the start of my presentation, but I'm not going to go into this very deeply. But basically, as you know, we want to connect the public to the data and the discoveries and the experts that are connected to NASA's astrophysics missions. And this is part of that. So why these audio stories? What are we doing here? So what this is it's an audio series exploring how we learn about the universe. And by how, I mean, not just like, oh, galaxies are cool, or there's a black hole, but like, how do we know there's a black hole there? How do we know dark matter exists? There are all these things we talk about that we can't see. So how do we actually know they're real? What is the process of science that we go through to verify that the stuff is actually there? And also, who does the science? Because we still have, I think, as a society, we still have some very stereotypical views of who does science, and I would like to shatter those views into oblivion in a gentle and friendly way. So we will be telling stories of all different types of people who do science. And so each story has a few different parts. There's going to be a story of a major discovery. So that's the narrative section. So, how this particular big discovery in astrophysics came about. Who is a scientist? What's the scientist's story? And we talk about like the scientist's background and their experience as well, not just like, oh, here's the data and this is what they saw. But of course, we do go through that as well, right? We go through the techniques of observation and analysis that they use. Oftentimes, there's this misconception that science is a very linear process, hypothesis, data, conclusions. But it's really like hypothesis, set up experiment, build experiment, data, analyze, clean up data, analyze data, have some conclusions, and wait a minute, hypothesis needs to be modified, and your conclusions don't make sense, but then the data is saying what the data is saying, so you have to, it's a web of complications, and that is the scientific process. And we want to lay it open for people to see that it is actually this complicated process. And there is a lot of effort that goes into us making sure that as scientists, the things we say are things we actually can trust that our data is saying. And of course, as I said, the people. Excuse me, as we mentioned before, there will be an emphasis on work by scientists from underrepresented minorities. So, I guess I just talked through all of this. So yeah, we have that narrative segment, which I talked about, episode components. So the narrative segment is that story of discovery that I spoke about. Then we do an interview with somebody in the field who's working on that topic now. So if it's a recent discovery and we can get the person who was actually involved, or one of the people who's actually involved in the discovery, like, that's great. But for a lot of these we're looking at major milestones in astronomy. So a lot of the people who are involved in these discoveries are no longer around, but we'll find somebody who's working in a related field today and talk to them about their science and their experiences, and what they think of the story with the original discovery, and any fun things we can come up with over there. And then we want the audience to engage. We want the audience to build their own identity as scientists. So we give them a chance to explore the scientific processes that we've been talking about in the episode. So we give them, like, we either propose a different universe of learning activity or a different science activation activity, or something we come up with at the time, and go like, hey, go do this and you'll understand, like, that thing we were talking about. And then we ask them for feedback. Is there anything interesting you found while doing this activity? Or are there any questions you have, having listened to this story and this interview? And it can be questions about the science, it can be questions about the people. Everything's open, everything's fair game. And then we say that we will highlight and answer some of those questions and highlight some of the feedback in the next installment. So this is an invitation for the audience to participate as scientists and thinkers themselves. And so we combine cool science with easy to understand language. This is audio only because we want this to be accessible to as many people as possible. And much of astrophysics outreach depends on all the pretty pictures we have. And while the pictures are beautiful, we want to do things that come in different formats as well. And it's also accessible to audiences who might want to engage with astrophysics, but don't have the time to, like, sit down and watch a video, or don't have the time to, like, take a day out and go to the museum and do something. So it can be listened to on the go. You can, listen to it on your commute or while cooking or something, or while exercising. And as I said, we intentionally showcase the stories and voices of scientists from a lot of different backgrounds so that people who don't often see themselves represented in science do so. I froze. Was that me, or can you all hear me? Okay, we're good.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, so yeah, we intentionally showcase all these voices because we want people to see that bits of themselves in the scientists as well. And so this is the first story, and we currently have one story released. It's called Hydrogen Hunters, and it follows Dr. Cecilia Payne-Gaposchkin. Now I would ask, well, I can't actually see the group, but for those of you who are joining us, how many of you have heard of her? I can, like, maybe do the raise your hand thing, or
Yeah, if you want to raise your hand, I can look at the participant list and
Yeah.
let you know. So if you have heard of her,
If you
raise.
have heard of her, like click the raise your hand button.
Got one no, I think.
Yeah. Well, I can't see the raised hands. But
We can assume the majority doesn't. Yep.
yeah. And for those of you who have heard of her, I'm imagining that you probably hadn't heard of her when you were like in early college or high school.
Absolutely not. No.
And for me, as a professional astronomer, I'd like heard her name in late undergrad, but until grad school, I didn't really know what she had done. And she is the person who discovered what stars are made up of. She discovered that stars are mostly hydrogen and helium. And I feel like everyone should know her name. Every kid in school should know that this is the person who told us what the stars are made of. So she's the story we tell to start with. And then we interviewed Dr. Antara Basu-Zaik, who's working with stars and hydrogen today, to see what she can figure out about the universe today using hydrogen. And actually wanted to point out that this episode, the story was done in conjunction with the Smithsonian's Because of Her Story initiative, and we had an intern working on it. We actually were actively trying to get a variety of different people to come in and work on this. So we also bring in more perspectives into the building of the project. So, you know, if it's just us deciding whose stories to tell, then we have the same set of scientists in our heads. And so we get more people, so we get their perspectives. Yeah, and I would just like to play the very beginning. Can you all hear that? Okay. In the early 1900s, 5-year-old Cecilia Payne saw a meteor shooting across the sky for the first time. In that moment, she decided that she wanted to be an astronomer when she grew up. However, she was a little scared that because she was so young, she would be too late to make her own discoveries about our universe.
At a very early age, I made up my mind to do research and was seized with panic at the thought that everything might be found out before I was old enough to begin.
And I'll leave it there, but then we continue with her story and how she grew up to find that not everything had been discovered, and she made, you know, all of these wonderful discoveries of her own. So yeah, and so yeah, we have this one story. There are 4 parts. And you can go from part to part on the website. They're also available on Google and Apple Podcasts. And we have a bunch of additional resources as well. So we have the activity that we talk about in the story, like, hey, you know, go do this to explore the science. We have that one featured. We talk about varieties of spectroscopy, and because she used spectroscopy to figure out what the stars are made up of. Excuse me, I have allergies. So yeah, we provide a lot of other resources and activities to connect to. There's this Reach Across the Stars app, which highlights women in astro. Excuse me, needed to get that out. Yeah, so we have all of these. And we tested this with a variety of audiences because we wanted to make sure that we're actually reaching the people we want to reach. So there's various groups around the country. We had a group of young girls. We had a blind and visually impaired group. We tested this with as well. We got a highly positive response, and we got a lot of great suggestions. So we actually reformatted the whole thing and added a bunch of things based on all the feedback that we got. We turned it into 4 shorter sections instead of 1 really long section because everybody liked all the content but didn't want to listen to it all at once. We have some more vivid science descriptions, and we have what we're calling a low distraction version. So you heard that music, and for some people that music was great, and like they were like, oh, I love the music, it helps me concentrate. And for other people it was just too distracting, they couldn't hear anything. And it turns out that's a half and half it's almost a 50-50 thing amongst people in general. So we're like, we'll make both so that whoever wants the music can have it. And whoever doesn't won't have much of it. And the music, by the way, I forgot to say, is an active sonification of data. That is, you're listening to a sonified version of the center of our galaxy. And one other image. I should include details about that on the website. I haven't yet. But yeah, you can see some of the quotes. People found Cecilia very relatable. She was told she can't do something because she's a woman, but then she wrote one of the most brilliant PhD theses of all time. And people, they found this empowering. And we found a lot of people really got interested and went and searched up Cecilia herself, which was great. Or like, oh, if you're gonna go Google what you're hearing about, that's great, because that's got you interested. And yeah, so we will have a bunch of different stories. They'll be focusing on all of these universe of learning topics. And I think I've talked for a long time. So thank you. And let me know if you have any questions. And I would also welcome any ideas about, if you or learners wonder about, like, how did we find out about X, Y, or Z? Like, let me know. Or if there are stories you would like to see told, I would love to hear about that.
That was great, Rutu.
Oh, I'll stop sharing. Sorry.
If you want to stop sharing, then we can get back. Oh my God. So I love that you put the little intro to the audio so we could hear it, and then the option to have music in the background or not have music in the background. I hadn't really heard of that availability before, but it makes so much sense when you said it out loud. I was like, oh, of course, like, why it could be distracting for some folks. So that's awesome. I'll open it up here though. If there's any questions for Rutu or anything about the project, feel free to jump in and unmute yourself.
Oh, I just said this in the chat. This is Sarah Beth. Rutu, this is really great. I'm going to share this with my own project. We've been going into middle schools, and we have one more school. It's a school for kids that are at risk of not finishing school. And I think this would be really, really amazing because it will be relatable to them. So totally going to use this, so thanks.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm really glad to hear that. I will say that, so it is aimed at a general public audience. We have made the language so it should be accessible to high school students. We're hoping it will be accessible to middle school students, but they might need a little bit of help during the science sections. We're not sure. But generally the language should be, the science explanations I'm hoping will be at a middle school level. It's I think it just depends. We talk about energies and atoms, but we explain where these energies come from. So we have gotten some varied response on that. So just something I wanted to make you aware of. I think I definitely know of middle school kids who would enjoy it, but I don't know all middle school kids. So just wanted to put that out there. And I would love to hear how it goes with the middle school audience.
Exactly.
Oh, I will. I had to mute myself because we have our museum is by a train track, and it was going on, and it's like honking in the background. I think the reason that this will pair really well with what I'm doing is we take them through a series of 4 different lessons, and they're scaffolded so that they can build on what they've known before. Because some of the science explanations might not be too crazy for them, but if it starts conversations, I completely want that to happen. So this just sounds great.
Thank you.
Well, I enjoyed listening to your podcast. I was listening to the 4 of them earlier. And Rutu, tell us about you. What about your career? Where are you in astronomy, and what kinds of things do you do?
Well, so I started off my career thinking I wanted to be a professor and go into the line of research completely. Like in high school, I loved science and math and all of that. But I also loved literature and poetry, and I like to write. I went to undergrad, I did physics. I was fairly certain I wanted to be a physicist, but still did philosophy, still did a bunch of other humanities. And then I went to grad school. And that's where I really started doing astronomy. And that's where I actually, as I said, I found out who Cecilia Payne-Gaposchkin was in grad school, and I really wish I'd known before. My background is in cosmology. So I studied the universe sort of as a whole, what it's made up of and how it's changing over time. So dark energy, dark matter, these things that we hear about, how they're affecting the universe. Is it expanding? Is it going to keep expanding? And I do this by looking at clusters of galaxies, which are basically some of the most massive things in our universe. They're like they're the most massive gravitationally bound things in our universe. So they're the biggest things that we can look at and be like, oh, that's like a single thing, and that's a thing, and that's a thing. Once you get beyond the scale of clusters, you basically just have like the universe. So I look at those and how they grow over time, and that tells us about how the universe grows over time. So that was grad school. And that was the first time in my life I didn't have a large component of life, which was writing and humanities and literature. And I really missed it. And that was when I was like, okay, no, I can't be a professor and spend the maximum amount of my time doing research. I really enjoy doing research and I want to do it for some time, but I want to spend most of my time sharing how wonderful the universe is with people, which is what I'm doing now. So now I still do research for some time, some part of my time. I got a little tired of looking at groups of hundreds of thousands of things. So now I pivoted and I'm looking at individual weird objects, trying to figure out what they are. And now I do this with NASA's Universe of Learning. So it's this project and a variety of other UOL projects that I'm working on.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for asking.
How do people come across this resource? Just, I mean, you said it's for general public, so I was wondering how would they find it? I mean, how would they know it's there?
We are working on that. As I said, this is the first story. We've put it on social media. We've reached out to some partners about it. It's been there's been a blog post published about it in the blog that the Perkins School for the Blind runs. So we're getting our feelers out, basically. I'm talking to all of you here. We're working on building that audience and helping people find it. We hope that, with partnerships with other Universe of Learning projects or NASA Science Activation projects, we will point to their projects and they will point back to us. And it's a growing process. So if you have any ideas, that I would love to hear them.
It is also on the resources, the Universe of Learning resources page. So
yes, it is
any
there.
educator that is familiar with NASA's Universe of Learning, which we are every day growing, has access to it. And I assume, Rutu, if somebody is just a random podcast listener, they could stumble upon it by searching for astronomy or some sort in there.
I would imagine. I mean, it's open to the public. Yeah, the website you can. So I think the link we have here is the Universe of Learning page. The audio is actually hosted on Universe Unplugged. So it's Universe I'm just typing this in. Unplugged.org/diaries. We actually made this shorter URL. I don't know why that one didn't turn into a hyperlink. But universeunplugged.org/diaries works. And actually Universe of Learning.org/diaries might also work. I'm not sure. But yeah, so these pages, I'm sorry, where was I going with this?
Access to the pages. It's on Universe of Learning
Yes.
project page, but the audios are specifically on Universe Unplugged.
Yeah.
And it's easy to share out on that location just a bit better. So I dropped the hyperlinks on the chat there.
Thank you. Yes. And that page actually has the like feedback form and everything. So if you do have questions, if you do want to give feedback about the activities, that page has it. And it's on Google and Apple. So yes, if the public were just searching for astronomy, I imagine it would turn up. I don't know how they optimize their searches, and given that it's a fairly new program, I'm sure it'll take some time, but it's there.
All right. Any last comments or mentions to Rutu as we wrap up here?
I have a question, Rutu.
Yeah.
Who's next on the list? What are the next stories?
We have a few. One of another story that an intern worked on. So we had 2 interns who've already worked on this. Is about, and this is why we have interns, is about an astronomer that I hadn't heard of, and I was like, wait, I should have known who she was. So this is what it just motivated me to get more interns to work on this, like more people who would bring in new ideas. It will be about Margaret Burbage, who was one of the people who figured out how the stars create all the other heavier elements inside them. So how we go from helium to carbon to oxygen to, everything up to iron. And it's her story. And then we also interview someone who is working on similar things today. I've been working on a story about Dr. Jocelyn Bell Burnell. She, for those who may not have heard of her, which again is sadly many people, she gave us the first evidence that neutron stars exist. And you don't usually hear it put this way. They say that she made the first detection of pulsars, but pulsars are neutron stars. And when you think about it, she actually gave us the first evidence, like first direct detection of neutron stars. And her story is really fascinating because for a long time, they just had to do so many checks on her data to make sure that they were seeing what they thought they were seeing. So it's a wonderful story. And she herself has agreed to be interviewed for that. So I am excited about that one. We have a lot more. There's a story I'm working on with Vera Rubin and Fritz Wiki and how we know that dark matter exists. And then there are a lot others which are in like just the very early stages. I mean, even the Vera Rubin story is in a pretty early stage, but these are some of the ones that we're hoping will come out soon. And we have more interns who are coming in to work on it this year. So whatever ideas they have.
That's awesome. I'm very excited to see what the rest of the series brings, and I'm going to be listening, Rutu. And we're at the 2:30 mark, so I'll stop it here. Thank you so much to our guest speaker, Rutu, and for everyone joining us today. Please check out the series. If you have any recommendations on who might be cool to feature, or you have any recommendations for audience and engagement, let us know. We can get it back to Rutu. So thank you all so much.
Yeah, and I don't mind putting my email here, so you can just
great.
contact me directly.
Yes. Okay, you guys got the contact, so you can directly contact Rutu.
I have to now just make sure I'm spelling my name correctly. Are you here?
Yeah, I'll share out her contact after the recording as well.
Oh yeah, awesome. Yeah, so I am happy to hear any thoughts you might have. And thank you for having me, and thanks for checking out the series.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. Have a good afternoon. Talk to y'all later.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye,
Thank you
everyone.
too. Bye.
Thanks.